Welcome to the Innovation Conversation, a podcast about innovators, both in business and real life. Hosted by myself, Ricardo Pascual, and Harry McDonough.
This podcast is sponsored by openexperts.com. Open Experts is a place to go if you're looking to talk with top experts from around the world. That is open-experts.com. This podcast is also sponsored by startupnetworks.co.uk. Startup Networks, it's an online forum where you can find all the resources you need to run your startup. From grants to investors to tips and tricks on how to be successful in your startup.
Today with Hattie Willis, co-founder of E3 Race, host of a podcast called Not My First Guest, and also a founder of Guessworks.
Hi, and welcome to another episode of the Innovation Conversation. Today we are joined by Hattie Willis. Hattie, welcome.
Thank you so much for having me, and thank you everyone who's listening. I hope your day is going well wherever you are in it.
No, it's a great intro. I don't think we ever had anyone so nice. Hattie, would you like to introduce yourself to the audience and kind of tell them a little bit more about yourself?
Sure. So as my name implies, and this is going to be pun heavy, but that's a good introduction to who I am as a person, I wear three different hats. So I have all three different companies. So I'm the founder of a company called Guessworks. We go into schools, universities, accelerator programs, and a few brave corporates, and we teach early stage innovation skills. So everything from how to come up with new ideas, how to test them in an early stage with real customers, how to think about whether you should go and get funding, how to fundraise, how to pitch. All the common stuff you'd find on an early stage accelerator, we teach it. And that's built on my background. So I was head of training at an innovation consultancy. I've spent the last 8 years designing and running workshops. I've got pretty good, I hope, at that, turning frameworks and tools into something that isn't just theory, something you can really apply to your startup straight away. And then we bring in incredible founders who have lived experience, who have different skill sets, applying these frameworks, and we get them to teach as well. So they might not know how to translate those skills, those stories into what students need or founders need to be able to practice it, but we help them with that. So that's the first business, Guessworks. The second business, If We Raise, is all about trying to work with founders directly. So we aim to help founders who don't have an uncle who works in VC, who don't have parents who can put the first thousands of capital into their business, who maybe don't feel like they know anyone in entrepreneurship and it's feeling super lonely. And we try and help them in a few different ways. So the first big question, and the reason we're called If We Raise, is we try and help them work out, should they be thinking about fundraising at all for their business? Lots of the founders that come to us are thinking, I'm about to start fundraising. How do I do it? And we ask first, should you do it? Because it's been so fed to us, I think, as this idea that that's how you start a startup, right? You have an idea, you go get funding, you grow, you succeed. So we try and challenge that. If funding is the right path, we want to help those founders, particularly underrepresented founders, so female founders, founders of colour, disabled founders, LGBTQ plus IA founders, and founders from lower socioeconomic backgrounds who we know are less likely to be backed by investors. We try and help give them kind of warm introductions into the investment space. So to meet angel investors, we have an incredible group of angels who support us, and we're not introducing in the sense that they'll then necessarily make an investment, but our hope is that they're kind of conduits into the space. So you have those warm introductions, which we know matter so much to fundraising. And then on the other side, if you work out you don't want to fundraise, which is a great path too, how do we help you grow your business through what we call bootstrapping, which is a kind of common term in startup world for growing a business without external investment. And so how do you do that and feel less alone in the process? So that's If We Raise. It's a community and courses and that angel group that sits behind us. And then we have a third company that I'm co-founder of with different co-founders, and that is called Angel Syndicate. And we're all about trying to create more groups of angels. So if I'm using the word angel investor and you have no idea what that means, they're individuals investing their own money. So these are people who might be exited founders. They might have joined a startup and it's scaled and grown and they've got a nice chunk of cash when that startup's exited. Or they might just be experienced professionals with something to bring more than just investment. And those investors often form what are called angel syndicates, which are just groups of investors who share a theme they want to invest on. That might be based on the founder, so like investing in female founders. It might be based on the space, like climate investments. And so our goal is to make it easier to do the unfun side of running an angel syndicate. So making sure you're compliant, managing your deal flow, all of that fun stuff. And also make it easier for founders to get funded faster, which is a big goal for me in general. If you're going to go after funding, how can we make that a better process for you?
Okay, so it's you were not kidding when you said you do put on a lot of hats. I mean, that's quite impressive.
And there's a podcast just for fun because
and there is a podcast,
I needed a hobby.
So first question that pops into my mind is, how do you manage all this? Because there's a lot of stuff happening.
Yeah, good question. So I have a wonderful EA is probably the most honest answer, which was a recent hire. So I joined the last startup, Angel Syndicate, at the end of last year. And I think that was probably the straw that broke the camel's back to realizing I needed more help than I was paying for. And so I've got an EA. She's wonderful. She is a huge support to making sure she sends me the sweetest emails that just say nudge when I'm kind of leaving things on the back burner too long. She helps me with a ton of stuff. So that genuinely, and I used to think it feels like a really, it almost feels like a humble brag, like, oh, I have an executive assistant. Like it just, I actually really resist it for a long time, I think, because it felt like thinking too much of myself. Like it kind of felt like I was bigging myself up to do it, which is a weird thing to think, but maybe resonates with some listeners. So if you feel like that, I feel you. And I started speaking to founders and a few founders who are really rated, who are also quite early in their journeys. You know, all three of the businesses are early and they're still very much in hustle phase and bootstrapping. And so we don't have huge money to spend on hires. But I was speaking to these other founders who'd made the leap, and they were telling me about what it had given them, like freeing up their time. And I had this, I guess, like mindset shift at the end of last year, which was realizing I was actually really burning out. And I think I did slightly burn out at the beginning of this year for a number of reasons. But I think making the mindset shift to, hey, I'm not just going to invest in the company, but I'm going to invest in myself, and I'm going to back myself that if I bring on someone, and EA is quite helpful because it's not a permanent hire. For me, it's like it runs as a virtual assistant, so I can, you know, pay for a number of hours a month, and I've got like a month's notice if it's all going really wrong and I need to get out of it. And so I saw it as kind of what I need to invest in myself and freeing up my time. And I back that if I do that, I can sell more, I can be more creative, I can do the hard stuff that my brain needs more time than I'm giving it at the moment to think around. But that said as well, I'm not sure I've nailed it. And I certainly feel like I'm dropping balls all the time, and it's a work in progress.
I'm just going to ask you about something related to that, which is, what do you think is the common denominator in a successful founder? Like when it comes to mindset? Like you meet a lot of people that are, you know, bound to be very successful, and they're going to be very successful. So what do you think is the common denominator in their, you know, ways of thinking? Because we were just talking about how relevant it was to you to actually get an executive assistant to help you manage your time better, right? And to help you manage all the many things you do. So what's that one thing you know for a fact that everyone needs to have if they want to be successful as a startup founder?
So this is going to be a bit contradictory, but I think for me, it's a growth mindset. So the idea, and that comes in a few different ways. So one is the idea that if I don't know how to do something, I can probably teach myself. And I interviewed an incredible founder on the podcast recently, Simi Lindgren, who literally has built an AI platform. She didn't know how to code. She didn't know how to do AI. So she was like, well, I can just teach myself that. And that's an insane mindset to have, right? Yeah. And I think I have it to a lesser degree, but this idea of, okay, I don't know how to do that. That'll be fun to work out. Or I'm not good at that yet. And I think I'm not expecting to become brilliant at everything, but I kind of have this idea that I can learn a lot along the way. And if I can't do something, it doesn't mean I won't ever be able to do it. And I think that's really important for founders, because in the early days, you are going to have to wear so many hats, and those hats might not come naturally to you. They might not be what you enjoy, right? There's lots of things you have to do in the early days that are not fun or glamorous. And I think going through that process of working out how do you do, I don't know, VAT returns, how do you do all the stuff when you can't afford to outsource it, is a really good learning to go through. And then you have to kind of transition to working out what that growth mindset should be applied to. So just because I can learn to do something doesn't mean I should, doesn't mean that's a good use of my time. And there comes a point where actually you're growing and selling enough that you have a bit of money to play with, maybe to bring someone in. And so it's then working out, okay, well, where should I direct that in order to relieve myself to grow into the next thing? So just because I can grow in everything doesn't mean I should. I think is a big part of it.
I'm wondering something else. You know, obviously you have 3 businesses all running at the same time. How do you say no to things, right? When do you say no to things? Like, what is that thing that you realize actually it's not just a time constraint? It's actually I need to say no to these type of things because they'll take too much of my energy, or it's not, it's not the right direction for me. So how do you manage all that?
I feel like a better question is, do I say no to things? And the answer is no. Just to be really meta about it. No, I'm joking. So I do say no to things. I have a kind of framework that I built with a coach that I use sometimes and should use all the time, but use sometimes. And it's a kind of weighting of an opportunity needs to deliver one of a few things. I've got my emojis on for anyone watching the video. It's going to do some fun reactions as we go. It's the
you're doing the emojis. I had no idea we can do emojis here.
Oh, let's not get started on that. If anyone hasn't downloaded the iOS reactions, they're very fun. Have a watch.
Okay.
But I think the things that are really important are, for me at least, it has to fit in a number of categories. One, am I doing this for the impact? So if we raise is not making me a personal salary, it is really about the impact we're delivering. And down the line, I hope to take a personal salary from it because I want it to be sustainable. But I'm quite motivated by impact. So I often work for accelerators where they're not paying incredibly well, but I love the mission that they're on. I share the mission. So the impact thing is a big reason I will say yes or no if it aligns with what I'm trying to achieve in the ecosystem, which is making it easier for anyone to access, particularly those who've historically been blocked from the ecosystem, whether that's through funding, whether that's through being made to feel like they don't deserve to be in the room because no one else looks like them or has the same background or the same accent. So if it aligns with my personal mission of what I want to achieve, I'll do it. It's pretty straightforward. If it makes enough money to pay for me to keep doing what I'm doing, so I'm, bootstrapping 3 businesses, I need to keep paying my mortgage. That is a pressure, right? And I hadn't had a big personal exit before this. That means I'm sitting on a stack of money that I've got huge savings to burn. And I'm sure some people can relate to this. So, and I guess the reason I always put that second is it can't conflict with values, right? I'm not going to go and take a huge amount of money to work with an accelerator that is working against my principles or a corporate that's against my principles. So I guess that's number 2 is, it makes a ton of sense. It's a nice check. 3 is, am I going to really enjoy it? And that might come in a number of ways. Like, I just really enjoy working with these people. They're amazing. I want to spend more time with them. I feel like I'm learning from them is a massive one for me. And do I feel like I'm learning something I want to learn because I really get energized by getting better at that skill? So for me, for instance, the podcast, Not My First Guest, that delivers a few things. It doesn't deliver money. If you're starting a podcast because you want to make money, I wouldn't. Or at least I haven't worked out how to do that. But for me, it allows me to be around founders who inspire me and who I learn from and who I think make me better at every other job I do. I think they make me better at giving advice. And if we raise, I think they open up a network who will come and support our if we raise founders. Yep. They deliver a ton of examples for when I'm teaching this and Guessworks. And I really enjoy the art of interviewing, and it's something I want to get better at. So that kind of ticks all of those boxes. And every so often, podcasts cost quite a lot of money to run. Every so often I'm like, should I just cut this? I'm having to sell way more to pay for it. But I keep coming back to no because it ticks those boxes. So I kind of try and have these criteria, and it needs to hit at least one of them very strongly. And ideally it needs to hit 2 for me to say yes to it. And the people thing comes in big time for me. So Angel Syndicate, I joined A, because it's mission aligned, but B, I really rate the people I'm co-founding with, and I love learning from them. And I feel like I come off every call with a better understanding of parts of the ecosystem that I don't have the same background or experience in.
And how did you get started in all this? Because you didn't just wake up one day and launch 3 businesses. So how did it happen? What was the journey like?
So the very short, slightly silly version is I kicked a man out of a bar. and he ended up hiring me onto his startup. And I ended up working in startups ever since. So I was at uni. I'm actually wearing my college bar jumper today. But I volunteered. Actually, I didn't just volunteer. I literally ran. It was like an elected position. I ran to be bar manager of this college. Hilariously, you had to do these things called hustings. We had to kind of stand up and defend why you were going to be the best bar manager. And hilariously, I actually had appendicitis at the time. And I was running with my wonderful housemate. It was quite funny. He was brilliant. He was our treasurer. And he kind of got up and said, Hattie couldn't be here today. She's at home. And one of my friends very graciously stood up and went, Paul, maybe tell them why she's at home. She's not just not turning up. But anyway, luckily he then did explain I really wanted to be there, but was lying in bed, unable to move without doubling up in pain. And so anyway, we got into the bar, and one day we were running stock take on a Sunday. A guy walks in. I've now had two people say I was quite grumpy. I used to say I thought I was very friendly, but now both my bar treasurer and the man who walked in said I was very grumpy and unreceptive. Mainly because I wanted to go home. It was a Sunday. I didn't want to be there. But he was running this startup. They were doing mobile gifting. So let's say I'm running late for your birthday party. I can send you a pint and you can redeem it at the bar. And they wanted us to be a venue. Really quickly, the unit economics didn't work. They were charging £5 a pint. We were getting massive resistance at the idea of raising prices from £1.20 for a pint. That was I think I'd have been people would have come for me. And so it didn't work. We kind of said, sorry, but recommended some other venues. And he gave us this little card that had this free pint on it, which was very kind of him. But we obviously weren't a venue, so it was a free pint for another bar, but still very thoughtful. And I went away, and later in the week I was doing a kind of supervision. So I'd come back and check everything was going okay. And I think I was lifting down a box of very heavy vodka, and I looked into the bar and saw him at the bar. And I was like, oh, that's nice, he's there. And then I realized he was handing out these vouchers. So I put down this very heavy box very quickly and grabbed the next guy who came past me out of the bar and was like, hey, what's that? Show it to me. And he showed it to me, and it was this free pint. And I was like, argh! And it really frustrated me because we were struggling. The bar was people were drinking less at uni at that time, which was great for their grades, but not great for us. And we were they hadn't inflated prices in 6 years. I mean, I think we were the last year they didn't inflate it. And so I was we can't afford for you to be giving away. They're students. If they get a free pint, they'll drink it somewhere else. And we actually need that pint. Every pint counts. And so I kind of asked him to leave and said, look, you can do I can't stop you doing this anywhere else in the college. You can literally do it outside the bar. I can't stop you. But can you at least have the respect not to do it while sat at my bar? That's just rude. And he had my email from the first encounter, sent me a very apologetic email saying he didn't really realize that was going to be an issue in his time in the bar, which I could believe. They just had so much custom that he just didn't think it would be a problem. And could he make it up to me? Why didn't we run an event where he would pay for all of the drinks for the evening if people downloaded the app? So the idea was I'll give out the free drinks, but they're at your bar. Yeah. And he came and ran it. I feel I'm kind of admitting that this should have been someone else's job, but we had a couple of social media pages that someone else had set up. I hadn't set them up. Yeah. And I had my laptop behind the bar, and I was just throughout the evening writing hey, come to the bar, free drinks. The most basic social media you've ever seen. And I was marketing to students. It's not a hard sell. Free drinks. Yeah. And the founder and his co-founder were there, and they were like, oh, we've just fired our social media team. Do you want the job? They were a few pints in at this point. And I was a really poor student. And I think I still remember they were like, oh, we were paying £600 a month. And I was like, oh my God, that's so much money. They never paid me that much. But I ended up hounding them for a month after this event. I still remember them kind of walking out the bar, kind of arm in arm. And I was like, so about that job, calling after them. And I just hounded them for like a month straight, being like, so how's that job looking? So we love that job. So how's the socials? And I still remember very vividly where I was on Oxford High Street when they like emailed, and I was like, and they were like, yeah, okay, let's do it. I think they paid me £80 a week, which was, you know, still as a student, amazing. And I remember being like, oh, I don't really know what Twitter is. And Instagram is this kind of new thing. Like, maybe I should learn that. And what have I got myself in for? And it was really fun. I learned a load. I gave out a lot of free brownies, free cocktails to friends. I was quite a nepotistic social media manager. Whenever I needed likes on a post, I'd kind of go around my housemates being like, who wants a free brownie if you like my post? But did kind of well enough that while the company failed, the investors and the founder really liked what I'd done. And so they kind of shipped me around their friends and their investments and said, hey, go and help them. And so I kind of started working with different startups, and it was always just like the founders and me. And so I got this like insane access to learn from them, and also the amount of autonomy to kind of have an idea and test it with real customers that afternoon. I was like 19. It was so addictive. And I think that is the thing that got me totally hooked on the startup world. And when I eventually left uni at that point, I'd worked with, I think, 5 different startups, everything from B2B, SaaS, to kind of B2B2C. And one of the last companies I worked with was for that original founder. He'd gone and joined an entrepreneurship education company. So they wrote the book called The Mum Test, which is still one of the most taught favorite books of most founders I interview, and one of my favorite things still to this day to teach. And they were teaching startup skills in like ecosystems like Estonia in universities. And so I kind of worked for them for a while, creating kind of content, doing all sorts. And then I kind of had this idea for a startup, which was terrible. The idea was so bad.
You got the bug.
I got the bug, but I had this like terrible idea, which was like I was gonna charge charities to advertise for what they really wanted from volunteers who would be like young people who, like me, had time but nothing to give in terms of like money. And yeah, it's actually a terrible idea in terms of monetization, loads of flaws. But so I had this idea, and I actually went back to this founder who I'd kicked out of the bar. We're still friends to this day. I've worked in 4 startups with him, you know, is that true? Yeah, 4. And I said, like, I feel like I've learned a ton from you. I feel like I've learned a ton from the startups I worked in, but I also feel like there's a ton of mistakes I'm going to make if I just go and do this. You teach it. I'm broke. Can I come on a course and I'll write some content for you or do something for you on marketing in, you know, as a favor? And he agreed on the proviso that I helped a bit at the workshop, that I let him buy me lunch, and that he could pitch me a job. And I was like, well, I'm really happy to press record on a camcorder. I love lunch and I like jobs. And so the job he pitched me, the standing joke is I've had to set up Guessworks, because the job he pitched me was basically Guessworks. So teaching or like educating students at universities on entrepreneurship and in ecosystems. And I remember the lunch, he was like, you're clearly so motivated by impact. I think you're really going to enjoy that. You're going to get so much from it. And we also do stuff with corporates, but I don't think you're going to be that excited by that. And I was like, yeah, no, like it's cool, but I'm not sure it's going to fulfill the impact side. Obviously, I spent the next 6 years in corporate innovation. So I joined the company, never worked for the university while I was there. But I really enjoyed it from like an intellectual perspective. I learned a ton. I got to kind of be very industry agnostic. So I saw how startups worked in totally different sectors, from banking to mining. Yeesh. But you know,
that's an interesting one.
Learned a lot through to kind of consumer goods, and it was intellectually amazing. The company was incredible at investing in me. So I think after a couple of years, I had been running these accelerator programs for startups. And again, all this training had been happening and I'd been sitting avidly in every session. And there was just a part of me that, and actually it wasn't just a part of me, one of our startups, because I would spend my time running programs, I'd spend so much of my time with them. And so they'd come out of these sessions and they'd start applying the skills and they'd run it past me and I'd end up kind of quietly coaching them, which I wasn't really supposed to be doing. And one of them kind of turned around to me one day and he was like, why are you doing this program management thing? You shouldn't be doing it. It's not what you want to do. You should be doing, why aren't you running the workshops? You should be running the workshops. Yeah. And so I pitched to that original founder. I said, I have 3 hypotheses. Hypothesis number 1 is that if you invest in me as a workshop facilitator, I can deliver huge value to this company. I think I'll be able to be a really good, like, low cost way of delivering workshops, but I also think the clients will be really happy. So like hypothesis number 2 is I think I'll be good at it. And hypothesis number 3 is I think I will love it. I think I'll get loads of energy from it. And those are hypotheses. I frame them as hypotheses, right? We taught people to think in assumptions. I was like, could be wrong, could hate this. You could spend loads of money training me and I'm rubbish, or I don't enjoy it and I want to change back roles. But luckily I didn't. And they did invest a huge amount in training me. I had one of the most incredible coaches. He was actually my first ever podcast guest, a guy called Devin Hunt, who'd been through Y Combinator with kind of the the Dropbox cohort, and really, just remarkable. I learned so much from him. They invested in pitch training for me, all sorts. So that was my way into training, and then I became kind of head of training and started designing accelerator programs. So they invested and backed me a ridiculous amount, and at an age where, I mean, I definitely felt like for a long time I kind of had to pretend to clients I was a lot older than I was. There was one accelerator in particular where they all became obsessed with how old I was, and they would like try and guess and try and catch me out, and I'm just like not.
Were you that young at the time?
Yeah, I was. I mean, I don't know how old it was. They were guessing like in their 30s, and I was like, I'm definitely like 25. Thanks.
Okay.
And they were like, but you look super young, but what you're doing means you must be in your 30s. And I was like, okay, I'm glad you didn't say I look old, because no one wants to be looking in their 30s at 25.
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
But yeah, and I loved it. I really, really enjoyed it. I did it for quite a long time. I then kind of decided what we were doing needed to be made digital. So I kind of pitched, I wanted to do a digital learning product to take everything we were running in person and make it scalable. So that was really fun. I sold it to a client who that sale paid for the development of the first version. I got to go and kind of do it. And it was great fun. I was suddenly like writing scripts and directing and, recording stuff and creating these whole courses. And I really enjoyed it. But I kind of got offered the chance to stay and run that as a business unit. And I thought I was going to take it. I really did. I was kind of told, you're on the path to partner. You're an associate partner, and we'll kind of build you up there. But increasingly, I think I realized the bits that I'd have to give up to become that role, I didn't want to give up. Like I love working directly with founders and startups. And increasingly, if I was like trying to take this more senior role, in that it made sense for me to step further and further back and run teams and be much less connected with it. And that was the right strategy for the company, but it wasn't right for me personally. And so I ended up leaving, but to join a spin out of the company that started a venture studio. So my role in that company was to kind of come up with new ideas, test them at an early stage. Do I think this is investable? Can I make an investment case for it that passes? We had our own investment committee, and then we would partner with a corporate, and they would invest as well, and they would lend not just money, but kind of unfair advantages to the ventures. And so that was really fun, like intellectually crazy. I mean, like kind of mad concept that every 8 weeks you go into a new industry and you try and come up with $1 billion idea within it, which is really fun, quite high stress. And so I ended up, and also like the ideas, you then had to hand them over. And we had this concept that we would only put a founder onto the idea who'd raised the equivalent of Series A funding. And that hadn't been my path. And so I was like, well, I can't really be a founder of one of these ventures in the model that we've sold to our investors and to corporates. So I think I need to leave. And so I left because I just wanted the space to kind of spend more time on things, come up with my own ideas. And like, if it was something that I felt like I loved and was super passionate about, I didn't have to hand over necessarily. So that took me to the 3 companies. That's how I got to Guessworks.
What, in this journey that you've been on, what was the worst that you had? The day you said, you know what, screw this, I'm going to go and work for McDonald's. Not that there's anything wrong working for McDonald's, but I'm going to get a proper job in a very nice, stable company. I work from 9 to 5. I don't need to worry about anything else. And how did you get back from that moment?
Like last Friday? And I mean, like, the truth is, I kind of feel like I have loads of those moments. And they never last long and they're never as deep as I'm not going to do this. But there are real points when I worry that I've messed it all up, and like often it's things like, we were talking before this about like how quickly podcast costs add up. And this year we're like really investing in it, and it's not a money generating thing for us. I'd like it at some point to wash its own face, but it's not. And so this year we've just taken on a load of extra overhead basically. And I'm also trying to transition Guessworks from being me running 99% of the workshops to I run the ones I want to run, because I will always want to run some workshops, as we learned from my previous quitting. But where I don't want to run a workshop or I don't have capacity, like how do we grow and I'm not the blocker? So we're increasingly bringing in these incredible entrepreneurs I mentioned who come and run the sessions, but that suddenly means like our margins take, if I'm running the session, like it's anything that's profit is profit. And suddenly we're bringing in these trainers. So I've got to triple sales this year in order to be more profitable than last year, because we've got more overheads and like our margins have taken a hit because the business model's evolved. And that's really exciting, but it's really scary. And that point of, me getting an EA and me getting this other support and that feeling like I've got to back myself, there is this part of me that's like, what if there's still the sense, and I'd like teach founders to get through this, but I still hit it, and I don't stay in it for very long, but I still hit it of, what if I invest all this and I still fail?
What do you do in those moments? Like, who do you go and ask for help? And
so I guess
advice to give people as well.
So I'm really lucky in the sense that I had like one of those moments, literally, I wasn't joking about last Friday. I had one of those moments, and I have a few different people who help in very different ways. So I was having one of those moments over the weekend. My boyfriend walked in, looked at my face and was like, "What's up? You look anxious." And we talked it through, and he was brilliant. I mean, his immediate response was like, I'm not worried about, like, why are you worried about that? Like, you're going to, like, absolutely smack, like, there's no way, that's not worrying, but not in a dismissive way, and like, you've got this way. So I have like this like cheerleader and this wonderful person who like looks after me and checks in and does like a load of the emotional support that I really need. I also have incredible co-founders on 2 of the 3 businesses, and they don't just like help on the business that they're involved in, right? So Tim, for instance, on If We Raise, he has exited a couple of agency businesses, so he's always there when I have questions or just like feeling stressed about trying to transition Guessworks to a different model. I can go and ask him his advice on that. And then I have this incredible network of founder friends who just get it. And I think sometimes we've got to be careful. We've got to be better as a group, I think, of not just like, we'll all get together and we're all slightly stressed, and there's an element of like, it just becomes founder therapy every time we're trying to meet for drinks and catch up on life. But I find that really, really useful. And I think having those spaces, particularly as someone who tries to create that space for other people, it feels a little bit like therapists having therapists.
Mhm.
Like, I need a space where I don't have to be the expert, where I don't have to have all the answers. And I never pretend I have all the answers, but where at least I don't have to worry that is someone thinking that I'm incapable because I don't have the answer on this, because that sometimes does worry me. And so having like very safe spaces where I feel like I can just be super vulnerable and say, I feel like I'm messing this up, or like, I feel like I've made a really rookie mistake that I'd teach other founders not to make, and I fall into it. And I'll use those as teaching examples later, and I never worry about sharing them in the long term. But in the short term, when I'm going through it, I need someone who I can just be really real with.
You mentioned all these businesses and your relationship with your co-founders. How do you manage all that? Because I'm sure it's not just the managing of the businesses, but it's also managing of the relationship with co-founders, because they all have different ideas. They all want to take charge of the business that they're running simultaneously with you. So how do you manage all those relationships and the emotions that come with it?
I think I've had a really easy run of this. So, so Tim is my co-founder for the longest time. So he is genuinely. So there's a standing joke, which is that when my boyfriend started his company, I tried to have a really helpful conversation with him about, why Tim was the perfect match for me, and like how that would be helpful to him thinking about finding a co-founder. And he kind of interrupted me and said, like, Hattie, sorry, but Tim is just the perfect co-founder for anyone. Like, he's just that. And I've spoken to like people who know Tim since, and they're like, yeah, 100%. Like, he is just, so he's gone through, he's a trained coach. He's gone through training as like therapy training as well. And it just means that he's like incredibly self-aware and incredibly, like, his communication is outstanding. He's also really fun to work with. Like, he's funny, and like, we just super, like, I come out of every conversation energized. And in some ways, because we're not all in together, like, actually, when we do work together, we get to really enjoy it because it's not too close all the time. I think he's really good. I get the guilt sometimes of, I'm not spending all my time on this, but neither's he. But, sometimes life will come up, and I had some, personal stuff come up in January that I very much like felt I wanted to give the time to. And that was a choice. Like, I didn't have to, but I really, really wanted to. And I was very aware that it was to support someone else who, it wasn't directly affecting me. I didn't have to be there in a way that, like, often you would have to be involved. You can't walk away from bad things. And I kind of ended up saying this to Tim. I was like, well, this isn't happening directly to me. I'm taking huge amounts of time off for this. I feel really guilty. And he sent me back a message saying, that's why we've chosen to be founders, like, and we've chosen to found in this way because we want to be able to do life. And this is an important part of doing life. This is like the ability to be there for the people you love when you want to be there for them.
Yeah.
Like, that's one reason to not work in a big corporate, right? And he also simultaneously said, he said, I promise you, I will take responsibility that if I start to feel like you're taking the piss, I will tell you. So the responsibility is on me, not you. You don't have to worry about that. You don't have to second guess that. I will just communicate if I feel like we're getting there. And so it kind of took this weight off me of, I still, worried about it a bit, but in that time when I was really trying to kind of give all my energy to someone else, him taking that weight off me was just, I can't even begin to say how grateful I am to him for it. And that's who he is as a co-founder. And then, he'll also challenge me and, big me up and make me feel great about myself. So, like, I think I've been super lucky with Tim, and then with Angel Syndicate, I have kind of 4 different co-founders on that company. And all super different. And it's a bit of a different company in the sense that, like, everyone involved is also wearing multiple hats. It's like no one is full-time on it. No one is, feeling like, what are you all doing? You're not here. But it's just been it's been a joy to navigate it with them. And that's an earlier co-founder dynamic. So we're still working out all of our dynamics, but so far it's been I feel they're very good at kind of making you feel valued. And I think, that's my worry in that team, is that I'm younger than everyone else. I feel less accomplished. I kind of do to an extent with Tim as well, but that was slightly different because I'd had the idea originally, even though it became so different when Tim got involved that it became our idea, but I'd kind of brought him onto it. That had been a different dynamic. For the last one, I was brought on, and I was the kind of last co-founder brought in, and I'm like so much younger than everyone, and like just in a different life stage. But they've been, I guess, again, really one of the things that's been really, I guess, both lucky and something that I've actively been assessing is like they're really thoughtful of that. So I don't have to be the one to make the adaptations, because they're thinking about how to make me feel valued, how to make it clear that they, want me there, even if I'm not contributing in the same ways as them, that they see the contribution elsewhere. And so I think I've been really lucky, but also I've really looked for that, like, I guess, emotional intelligence in co-founders is a very strong thing I'm not willing to work without.
Just wondering, of all your teachings and the stuff you do, what advice would you give to people just launching their business who haven't been to any of your courses, they're just launching? Like, what do you say? Just get these basics right, because this would be, you always need to get this right. What would that be?
So the cheeky short answer is, we'll put a link in the show notes.
We can 100% put a link on the show notes, yes.
Because we've created a first-time founders roadmap at If We Raise, which tries to answer this question in like very tangible steps and very tangible advice that you can practice as you do it. Because the truth is, you've got to learn a new skill set if you're at the early stages. So the biggest piece of advice I would give to a founder is to really be clear on the risks in the idea, particularly to be very questioning of the demand that you're assuming. So like, if I'm first off, you shouldn't be building anything if you don't know exactly who it's for and exactly what problem it's solving. Like, stop if you're just building an app because you've had an idea for a fully formed product. And by the way, like, I don't want to be rude about that. That is also how most people come to an idea. You kind of think of the solution, you can picture the branding, picture the packaging. Like, that's normal. It's just really dangerous, and so be really aware if that's where you are. I'd pull back about 10 steps. So if you have an idea of who you're serving and the pain that you're going to relieve for them, particularly if that's because it's a pain you've lived yourself, my advice would always be to not take for granted and not assume that everyone else shares that demand and has the appetite to pay for a solution. And we hear so many stories of founders who have built from a personal pain, and I think it's a great place to build from. But it's such a big risk to assume that just because this really matters to you, it matters to the same degree to everyone else. And so I would really prioritize testing demand for the pain that you're planning to solve as early as possible. And often, I guess all I can say in a very generic sense is I promise you can test more quicker, cheaper than you believe right now. Because probably what you're saying is, yes, but I need money to test that because I need to build the first version of the product. You'd be astounded by how much demand testing you can do for such a cheap, like 30 quid, 50 quid, and how much that can both help you build something smarter. So it does inform the product you build. It can get you to market quicker, but also stop you building the wrong thing, which is such a waste of time, money, energy.
Now, Hattie, we can talk for hours, which is a shame we cannot talk for hours, but I know we can talk for hours. If people want to reach out to you and find more about you, where can they do so? And all the wonderful things you do.
Yeah, so best places are connect on LinkedIn. We'd love to know what you thought of the episode. Send me a message if you connect so I know where you've come from and tell us something that stuck out to you. It's always really helpful when meeting new people. And tell me your stage and what you're up to. The second place is Instagram. So Not My First Guess is on Instagram. So that's the podcast, and we have a little Instagram community behind it, and we're sharing resources there all the time. And then If We Raise, which you can kind of find via ifweraise.com. And if you want to talk a little bit about your funding strategy or your bootstrapping strategy, how are you going to grow without funding, then we have free 20-minute sessions available to book with myself or my co-founder, Tim. You'll kind of get one of us or maybe both of us. Okay. And I think one thing I'd always say to people quickly is I hate when I see like there's a free session and I'm like, you're going to try and sell me thousands of pounds worth of stuff at the end of this. So just for anyone who's wondering, if we raise our membership, which includes office hours, so 1 hour every week where Tim or myself or both of us are available to our founder members to come and ask any questions you have, and we'll direct you to resources, we'll answer questions from our own experience, we'll introduce you to people who can answer them better. Access to that and all sorts of other things is a guide price of £25 a month. And we never, ever, ever want anyone to feel embarrassed if that's still too high for where you are. We have a pay what you can choose it at the checkout, you can set your own price for membership, you can change it if your circumstances change, but we're not trying to get you into a 20-minute free session and then upsell you a terrifying amount. So come connect there and we can have a chat.
Wonderful. That's absolutely amazing. Hattie, thank you so much for your time today. It's been an absolute pleasure having you.
Thanks so much, Ricardo.
This podcast is also sponsored by startupnetworks.co.uk. Startup Networks, it's an online forum where you can find all the resources you need to run your startup, from grants to investors to tips and tricks on how to be successful in your startup. This podcast is sponsored by openexperts.com. Open Experts is a place to go if you're looking to talk with top experts from around the world. That is open-experts.com.